November 30th, 2025, board meeting for UETN. We'll start off with an agenda item of approving our previous board meetings, our minutes from the June meeting. So folks have hopefully had a chance to review those. Do I have a first and a second for that? So a first,
I move that we accept the the meeting minutes as written.
wonderful. And is there a second?
Second.
Wonderful. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Wonderful. Great. Thanks so much. We'll move on to the next item. And that is, if you look in the agenda, there's some dates listed out. These are for the 2026 board meeting or board dates, I guess, for us to meet. So let's take a look at those. We want to make sure we have a conversation, make sure those work for folks. You'll see February 13th, April 10th, June 12th, August 14th, October 9th, and please note that that's tentative for a retreat date, and then December 11th. So if folks could take a look at those for a second, check your calendars and see if those would work for you. Any concerns anyone might have? I did note that April 10th looks like it is the last day of spring break, at least for Alpine School District. I don't know about others. I don't think that causes a conflict for me, but I'm not sure for others if that might be.
April 10th is also a conflict for those of us who are superintendents. It's the National School Boards Conference, so many of us attend that.
Okay. Okay. So that one maybe we want to take a look at a different date then. Okay. All right. We can note that. Are there any others that pose any challenges for folks?
Chair Baum,
Yes.
can I just, at the risk of making this really messy, so these are traditionally the dates we've used over the years where we've met once every 2 months, 6 times a year on a Friday. The last several meetings, we've actually had them scheduled not on a Friday.
Mhm.
Is it easier to not have these on a Friday, I guess, is the overriding question? Because I know many of you are on boards who have those meetings on Fridays, whether it's trustees or others. Is it worth us exploring days that are not on the beginning or ends of the week?
Yeah. Thoughts?
Fridays work well for me, but I also can be flexible.
Okay.
Well, they work for me too.
Do Fridays pose a challenge for anyone? Maybe we can ask a little differently. Is that a challenge for anybody on Friday?
No.
Doesn't sound like it. Okay. All right. So Spencer, thank you. I think it sounds like Fridays do seem to work. It looks like the April 10th date, though, we may want to revise that one. Are there any other dates there that folks have concerns with? If not, I'm not quite sure on the approval piece. Guide me on this, guys. Can we take a vote on all the dates except for the April 10th date? And then we can take a look and revise that date and come back to it. Not quite sure on my
You
rules
can.
here. Okay.
You can,
All right.
Christina. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So can I get a motion then for us to take a vote to approve February 13th, June 12th, August 14th, October 9th, and December 11th? That's omitting the April 10th date that will come back to the board with a revised date. Unless we want to work through that date now. Do folks, I don't know, Spencer and Denise, would you prefer we look through a date right now for April?
We can work it out over email as well. If that's
Okay,
easy.
let's do that. So let's do a motion for all the dates except for April 10th. Can I get a motion for that?
So moved.
Awesome. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Awesome. Are there any opposed? Great. Okay, so we'll move forward with those dates. We'll work out a revised April date and get that sent out, and we can review that and get that approved at a future time. So, all right, awesome. Thanks so much, you guys. All right, moving along, our next agenda item is to turn some time to our Executive Director, Spencer Jenkins, who will kind of tee up a conversation around strategic planning that I believe we have Steve helping us lead through. So, Spencer.
Thank you, Chair Baum. And thanks everybody for hopping on today, not being a Friday. But this is the bulk of our meeting today, and the intent is to sort of set the stage for a retreat that you're scheduled for on November 5th. at UVU, where we'll hopefully take a little deeper dive on things. But what we wanted to do today was go over our key service areas at a very high level, and then with Steve's help, have some discussion from that framework of a SWOT analysis, so strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats kind of approach across these 6 different service areas, just as a way to get some discussion and some thoughts from you all, and also to ask questions if what we present isn't clear. But it's not something we've done for quite some time with the board, is to discuss these. And so our thought is to use that as a starting point from the standpoint of, with a board retreat, diving a little more into helping us as an organization develop a strategic plan for the next few years. And so this is really one of the key starting events for that. And then we as staff over the next month will work to develop some things in these areas a little more deeply from a strategic planning standpoint, to bring back to you at the retreat in November. And so with that, if it's okay, well, any questions? And maybe Steve, you can give a very high level introduction of what a SWOT is, just in case there are people here that have questions. You're all very able-bodied leaders, and so I'm assuming you know at a general level what a SWOT is. But any questions on what we mean by a SWOT and what a SWOT analysis is? And Steve, I don't know if you want to give a bit of an introduction there.
Let me just address this. SWOT analysis is a key part of strategic planning. So the question is, what is strategic planning? It's good to compare it to long-range planning. Long-range planning is we still do the same things we've always done, but we just kind of grow and develop those based on what services we provide. Strategic planning it goes this way. First of all, you have to scan your environment to find out what you're going to face in the years ahead. Particularly, this is true in technology. There's so much change going on in technology, the latest with AI. We just need to take into consideration what impact those are going to have on our future. So in strategic planning, you go out and you try to analyze the environment through the SWOT analysis. And you say, okay, what are our strengths and weaknesses in relationship to what we're going to face or what we do now, and the opportunities and threats of the future. Then we go through and set goals based on that SWOT analysis to make sure that we take into consideration the strengths and weaknesses which are internal to the organization, and opportunities and threats which are external to the organization. And that way, then you develop a plan that keeps you relevant for the future. I mean, that's kind of in a sense, what it's trying to do. I remember reading an article that came out from one of the universities back east, talking about industrial myopia. And industrial myopia means it's just short-sightedness. And the two services they talked about one was transportation. Trains thought they ran everything, and they thought everybody would take the train. They thought this stupid thing that was up in the air would never compete with them with passengers. And it turned out that the airlines industry took away what the train industry didn't take into consideration, as maybe that's something they were going to do if they were in the passenger transportation business. So trains, in a sense, lost out that business because they didn't strategically plan and consider what new technology might bring to the table, which would compete with them. And I think the other example they always use is Hollywood, who thought everybody would come to a theater all the time, and they thought this stupid little box was black and white screen that was really small and would never compete with them. But television turned out to be something that really altered the big screen entertainment industry. And had Hollywood taken that a little bit more serious, involved in network TV, they probably would have been much stronger in the future. So as we look at education and look at our strengths and weaknesses, the opportunities and threats we face, we need to make sure that we're relevant with the technologies that we have, we're relevant with the people we serve. And as we do that, then we'll continue to exist. But you can go to the stock market and see all the businesses that have failed because they have not taken this into consideration. And with the area of educational technology and what we're involved in, it is extremely critical that we put together a plan that makes sure that we are setting up that direction so that we align ourselves with what the future is going to bring. Any questions on that at all? So again, strengths and weaknesses are internal to the organization. Opportunities and threats are external. And the way that you take, once you do these SWOT analysis and kind of go through these issues, then that better puts you in a position to write objectives to make sure that that doesn't make your organization irrelevant for the future.
Thank you, Steve. That's a great overview. As you can tell, I don't know that if everybody knows here, but this is where Steve got a PhD. He's very well versed in strategic planning, and it's a tremendous opportunity to have him facilitating on our behalf here. So thank you, Steve. With that, I think we have some slides, Kelly. If you could put up that first slide, this just gives us an overview of the services we're going to be talking about. Thank you. If you just go to slide 3, I think we can start there, or even slide 4. So these are the 6 areas, and we'll just jump right in. I've asked a few of our leadership team to just spend 1 or 2 minutes talking about these service areas, and with the idea that you all will feel free to ask questions, weigh in on what your thoughts might be, and then of course I think with Steve's help we can help facilitate what this might mean in terms of a high level SWOT. We're not planning to get through what would be a real SWOT analysis today, but it's meant to at least start that conversation. So with that, Kevin, do you want to take it away? And
Sure.
Kelly, I don't know if you can change your presentation view.
Hold on. Try it again. No, did that work?
If you can share your screen again, we can see.
Oh, hold on. Is it not sharing the screen?
No.
Okay, hold on. I think I should have done a run through before. Okay.
Okay. Either way, that works. We can just, there we go.
There we go. There. Are we good?
Yeah,
Perfect.
if you want to just go ahead to Kevin's slides, that'd be great.
Perfect.
Yep. Next. So, real quick for a reminder to everyone, the UEN backbone is really like the interstate system of the internet throughout Utah. All of the traffic within the state travels across this interstate system, and we also have exit points out of state, which are similar to, which are basically the internet. So the backbone carries all of the traffic, whether it goes out to the internet or whether it goes between entities within the state. We're seeing network traffic double about every 4 years. On the left side, you see petabytes. A petabyte is about 1 million gigabytes of traffic. So last year we passed about 325 million gigabytes of traffic, which is a considerable amount. Next. So when I started 20 years ago, the backbone of UEN was leased entirely from, at the time it would have been Quest, which went to CenturyLink and now Lumen. They owned all of the fiber, they owned all of the equipment, they dictated updates on the network. Whenever we had to upgrade the network, it took about 18 months. So starting in about 2012 with BTOP money, and it picked up with CARES and now ARPA, we now own the majority of this, actually all of this backbone that you see right here from Logan all the way down to St. George. We own the fiber, we own the optical gear and all the routing gear on the network, which means that this is not controlled by a carrier. This is all controlled by UEN. If we need to upgrade bandwidth on this part of the network, we can do it in a matter of days or weeks as opposed to an 18-month cycle with the carriers. Next. On the east side of the network, all the way out to the Uinta Basin and down in the southeast to Price Moab and down to San Juan, we do not own any part of this network. It is entirely leased. All the fiber is leased. It's controlled by various carriers. And when we want to upgrade bandwidth or do things with this, we have about an 18-month cycle where we have to go through bidding process and then turn up with the carriers. Next. We've got 8 school district offices connected to with dark fiber now back to the backbone. These are the largest ones in the state, and they carry a lot of traffic. So the school district offices are the aggregation points for all of the schools. So now we have owned infrastructure into these 8 school district offices where we can upgrade bandwidth into there. We have a lot more control over that. We do not actually today run any fiber whatsoever out to the individual schools. Next. So the advantages of when we own UEN on fiber, we can upgrade it in weeks. We don't have to go through the E-rate cycle. The owned network does not rely on any federal funding. It's basically paid for, and we don't have to go out and get any money to continue that on. So what we're looking to do over the next few years is to hopefully upgrade the east and southeast backbones to owned UEN fiber and equipment, and also connect more of the school districts up to owned fiber back to the backbone. That's all I have. Are there any questions?
What are your concerns about the network and for the future?
So the biggest concern, I guess the threat would be E-rate funding. If something happens to that, we could be in big trouble due to the amount of money that we get. Luckily with, the own net where we have the own network, that will not go away. But, we've been very successful at upgrading, the network over the years. So I don't really see any issues besides funding.
If you go out and you own your own fiber, does that mean you have to replace your fiber at some point in time?
The cycle is 20 years. We've had some fiber for 10 years, but we expect it to last longer than that. But there could be the possibility where we have to go out and get new fiber at some point.
When you run your own fiber, Iowa, strung their own fiber, and then at some point in time they found out they couldn't share the expense with other people that would ride on it that were not part of education. Is that something that concerns you at all in the future?
It is all education, but it's shared. We connect pretty much everyone up to it who needs it within the education environment, DTS and so on. But we don't need anyone else to share the cost. It's all bought and paid for.
Okay. But the rural providers still, they are providing, and carriers are providing the connectivity from the backbone to the schools?
Yeah, from the backbone to the schools, with the exception of the 8 school districts that we connect. But yeah, the carriers, I don't see us running fiber out to the individual school locations. There's just too many and it would be too expensive. But continuing to build out and own the fiber on the rest of the backbone into additional school districts would be ideal.
And what do you see, any weaknesses internally that you're concerned about?
I don't. We've been very successful with upgrading and staying ahead of the utilization. We're doubling the traffic nearly every 4 years on the network, and we've had no issues with upgrading. With that being said, without CARES funding and ARPA funding, I don't know where we would be. Those have really saved us in being able to purchase fiber and all the electronics needed to light it. But we would probably be in trouble without those two if we didn't have those 2 funding sources.
Okay.
Steve, maybe I can mention one. It's not as major a weakness, but it is something that we're trying to wrestle with nowadays when new locations are being brought onto the network. They're needing to get on much more quickly than we usually plan for through our E-rate process. And because occupancy needs to turn up an HVAC system, for example, they need the internet on. It used to be that the internet was one of the last things that was turned on in a new building. Now it's one of the first things. And so it is something we're trying to address with new locations. Mike Shoopings, of course, oversees this procurement process, and we're trying to figure out ways to get a little bit more ahead of new locations. And sometimes we don't know about them in time from some of our LEAs.
When the network was first hooked up, it was kind of around instructional and teaching kinds of things. Are you also taking on utilities, sprinkling systems, and all those things? Are they being increasingly run on the network as well?
Yeah, pretty much everything is security systems, HVAC. If it can connect to the network, districts and higher ed are connecting it.
And it even goes beyond that, Steve. This is healthcare types of services, remote viewing of radiology images. All of these things now rely on that network.
Okay.
And the other thing to mention is with our own fiber network, we are able to have redundancy. With E-rate funding, we're not allowed to pay for redundancy, but now on the backbone, in most of these school districts, we do have redundancy in the event of fiber cuts or if equipment goes down.
And I do see Jason has his hand up as well.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, where do you see the CBRS and private LTE? I know that that's been a discussion across the state. Where do you see that going as far as a strength or a weakness or an opportunity? Or is it something different?
I think it's been viewed as somewhat experimental. We've never gone out and outright offered, here's CBRS as a technology. I think the broader thing from a strategy standpoint is we want to provide the connectivity that best supports our stakeholders. And so whether it's some cases, there's still some microwave out there on the very far end of our network. Fiber is a preferred, reliable use. You've kind of heard from Kevin's standpoint how critical that is, especially when you get into the backbone of our network. For several years, we've had significant resources going into some wireless efforts. Just so the board knows, we are going to be pulling back quite a bit on that. We don't want to do it in a way where it disrupts, where there are places in which people are relying on that technology, but we certainly aren't going to be pushing as forcefully as maybe we've been in that area. There is some research we're still doing there that we want to support, but it's not at the level that I'd call it an outright service that we offer explicitly, where someone comes and says, hey, I want to get into this LTE service. It's more, if it's justified, we'll consider that alongside all the other connectivity options we offer.
I appreciate you bringing the board up to speed with that.
Yeah, great question. Oh, thanks, Jason.
So thank you.
Any other thoughts or concerns around network?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna maybe mention too, so externally, I think we've had some struggles with one of our vendors. It's a non-performance and it's a little bit out of our control. And just wanted to at least bring some headlights on that as well.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
And Kevin, any capacity concerns? Have you got plenty of capacity? I know you put in a 400 gig backbone, but is there the capacity to take on what's going to happen in the future as more things go online?
Yeah, so we, as you mentioned that on that second slide, that is all 400 gig backbone. The line system that we put in, we can scale that up to 400 gig circuits if we need to. So it's definitely scalable way beyond anything that we would need.
Okay.
Kevin, what about on the telehealth side in terms of scalability?
Those are all leased circuits back to the individual clinics and hospitals. So to scale those, we have to go out to bid for additional services today.
And Kevin, the network is kind of a partnership. I mean, how does UETN interface with the district? Does the district kind of take the network over when it's handed off to the district office, or is it different for every district as to who provides the actual endpoint connection with the schools?
So we provide the circuits. Many of the districts manage their own networks behind the school district office. Some of them want us to do it. So it's really a mixed bag about how those are managed, and it's up to the school districts how they would like that done.
But the fact you let them do that is kind of makes it a strengthened partnership, do you think, or what do you?
Yes, yeah, many of them have special needs, and they have the right staff to run it, and if they would like to run it, they do. So it's a good partnership. Some of them don't want to touch it, so it depends.
And do you have a list of additional services that go on the network each time, or do you know what actually traverses the network?
We don't monitor what traverses the network. Troy with security, they may have some metadata, but we don't monitor anything that they're doing.
Okay.
And Steve, maybe that's a good transition to the next area of services is security.
I mean, I would just say the model in Utah compared to other states is unified, and because of that people work together. There are a lot of advantages that other states have not been able to pull off. But the fact that you've worked and distributed out the operation of the network to the districts and make sure that they have some kind of role in it, I think makes a good partnership going forward. So good work.
Yeah, we are fortunate. I think we're one of 2 states that has full coverage between K-12 and higher ed and some healthcare on a network like this. So, well, if it's okay, we'll move to the next one on security, and we have Troy Jessup who'll be giving us a dive on that.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I didn't have all of the time to pull slides together for you all, so I'm just going to be talking about it live for you here. So as it pertains to services that we're providing inside the Utah Education Network, primarily we provide service provider cybersecurity monitoring. And so we spend a lot of our time monitoring and managing the network for cybersecurity events and issues. Primarily, we focus on securing the infrastructure and making sure that all of our routers, switches, and other devices are secured, configured well, managed, etc. And then we have several tools at the service provider level that provide denial of service attack mitigation capabilities for when organizations, one that occurs regularly, an institution in northern Utah continues to get hit with DNS types of denial of service attacks. And so we step in and we mitigate and scrub those types of attacks. We have a lot of other traffic monitoring capabilities. Most of it's metadata types of services. And for the interest of privacy and not disclosing too much of our tools and capabilities in an open meeting, we certainly do a lot of data analytics on network trends, traffic, miscreant trends, a lot of threat intel hunting, and other things that occur as a result of that data that we're collecting at that service provider level. We also have the capabilities of doing traffic routing. This is off-ramping, monitoring, scrubbing, on-ramping types of services at that service provider level. So if bad traffic comes in and it's suspicious or whatever, we can off-ramp it and inspect it and run it through a bunch of different tools and services that we have, and then on-ramp it back to its destination if it's legitimate or makes it through a scrubber and those kinds of things. We also have the ability to black hole and route traffic that is malicious based off of a flow spec type of configuration. We can black hole specific types of traffic all the way up to just major IP address blocks and things that are causing problems. But that covers our service provider capabilities and services. Infrastructure security, we do monitor and manage all of the security for all of the services that UETN provides. These are all of our web presence services, like the UEN.org website and all of the teacher resources and other things that we're hosting and managing. And so we do a lot of monitoring and management for those services as well. And then there's a lot of direct customer facing services. Specifically, one of the most detailed services that we provide is a managed security service model for telehealth. And so we actually provide currently through this program firewall monitoring, firewall management, vulnerability scanning, and assistance with vulnerability mitigation and consulting and those types of services to a lot of our telehealth customers. This has been the case since the merger of UETN into UEN many years ago, and so that service continues. Then one of the other customer-facing services that we provide are UEN-based assessments. So many of the LEAs, and we primarily focus in telehealth, but even more so in K-12 education. The UEN security team provides assessments. This includes CIS controls assessments, which are interview-based types of things, all the way up to full-fledged penetration testing services where we actually go out and test the systems and services against, current threat models and threat capabilities and things. We also provide some initial incident response capabilities to customers. We often seem to be the first call that many of the customers make when they have a cybersecurity threat or a presumed threat. And so we will engage with them and help them quickly kind of gather their wagons and help them understand what their next best processes are. Oftentimes in major breaches, that just includes us sending them off to their insurance provider, for DFIR types of response capabilities and things. But we will certainly help do that initial triage and kind of confirm what they're seeing and stuff as part of an incident response process. And then the last thing that we do for our customer services, which is probably the most visible, is we provide consortium tools in cybersecurity. The biggest one that we've implemented thus far is a managed detection and response solution, which we've seen saturation through all 41 school districts. And we still try and get all of those charter schools to onboard. Charter schools are, I'll anticipate a question about weaknesses and things. Charter schools are an interesting and problematic group to interface with for consortium tools and management. They often don't have a lot of cybersecurity or IT resources to rely on. And so we have to carry a lot of water for them when we're deploying tools or investigating cybersecurity data or traffic and analytics, and something pops up from a charter school. We often have to do a lot of explaining on what we're talking about, how we're doing things, and it takes a lot of time and energy to do those kinds of things. And so certainly one of those areas where as we continue to roll out new consortium tools and services and things, charter schools and how we approach those need to be a consideration. But that's really a good summary of the services that we're currently providing. Questions?
Yeah, Troy, have you seen the legislative audit that came out?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, do you want to comment about that? It says here, and I wish I could share my screen. It says the legislature should consider studying minimum cybersecurity standards for local education agencies. These minimum standards could follow the principles behind the high priority practices outlined by cybersecurity and infrastructure security agency that are attainable by local educational agencies, regardless of size, and proven to reduce risk. So what kind of response, how can that risk be mitigated? And does the Utah Education Network assume that risk, or does that risk still reside with the school districts?
Yeah. Well, one of the interesting things that we're always contemplating is what is the liability that UEN, the organization, takes on with any of the cybersecurity tools and resources and things that we provide. We always work to mitigate that risk of bringing on more liability as we go through that. But as you're specifically referring to the CIS control framework and its implementation within K-12 education space, what we find is that the majority of the school districts actually have adopted, there's actually legislation that required school districts to adopt and report to USBE a cybersecurity framework that they were using. And so they've adopted, and many of them are using it for strategic planning and those types of services within the school districts. And it's making progress, but it's certainly not a major focus. I think one of the other really interesting findings in that legislative auditor report was showing that they're finding that the administrative folks inside of each one of these LEAs somehow, or in many cases, don't prioritize cybersecurity as high as they should. And one of the other interesting findings that I read out of that report was that many of the school districts lack cybersecurity resources in the way of personnel or even in IT services, the skill sets for cybersecurity. And so they're really, I think that they're doing well with what they've got and how they're prioritizing things, but there's certainly room for improvement here.
Yeah, the legislative auditors said they felt that like there needed to be a set that's agreed upon of CIS control standards,
Yeah.
higher in public ed. And we have that R345 for higher education. Is there any thoughts about having a policy for the public schools as well that maybe you could lead out on?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Steve, and I'll let Spencer weigh in on this as well. But we've often avoided at the UEN organization level of becoming a regulatory agency for, cybersecurity or anything else for that matter. And so taking on something to where we create governance around how cybersecurity needs to work would be or would need to be a consideration of the board to change that paradigm. But Spencer, did you have a comment?
Yeah. This is kind of striking at the heart of maybe some of our future at UETN because as this audit points out, there's a variety of levels by which the districts are implementing security. And we were pulled into a meeting actually earlier this week with some legislative staff, I think at the request of legislators taking interest in this, asking about our role in comparison to higher ed. And I think one of the big things I think that's important to remember, you all know this, higher ed is essentially centrally governed under USHE and it enables statewide policies that are enforced at the institutions. In public ed, there's still that local control mechanism. Jason knows this very well from a Q standpoint that we're there to provide services and enable and support. But at the end of the day, the local boards make those decisions, especially as it pertains to liability and ownership of something. I think there's going to be some policy direction associated with security that we'll want to watch very carefully because, as Troy mentioned, UETN's what's made it work so well over these almost 30 years is the fact that we offer a value add to our stakeholders. And we believe we can establish a model or formalize a model that reinforces that insecurity so that we don't get into the business of enforcing policies. But maybe this is something in partnership with USBE and maybe with the legislature that directs the policy component and that we're sort of the implementing entity that helps support the efforts of our districts as it relates to those policies or standards. So hopefully that helps a little bit at that larger policy level.
If I could add just a little bit, the regulatory agency for K-12 has typically been through R277 rule through USBE. And I think that as we look at legislation and look at the report, I've read the security audit report and been communicating with several people on it, but it would need to be USBE, I believe, in our 277 rule, then working in conjunction with UEN. I always compare kind of like a water meter. The city has responsibility up to the water meter, and then beyond that, the local control of the homeowner. I look at UEN as being the utility up to the border, and then the local board determines the policies that they're governed by through our 277 rule on the state level, and then legislative laws. Have I stated that kind of correctly there, Spencer, on how you?
Yeah. And if you want to take that analogy further and not getting too political, but as the water company, what we do to the water affects how it comes into individual homes or entities,
Correct.
whether it's fluoridation or whatever you want to put in there. But similarly with security, is considering what kind of tools we use to monitor and keep things safe, need to be done in partnership with the LEAs, but
And I'd
keeping
use
that
an
sort of.
example that Troy was using with that has been very helpful for the the school districts is ad lumen. That's kind of like putting fluoride in your water, or I shouldn't say fluoride. I should use something.
Jason, can you speak up just a tad? We're just having a hard time hearing
Yeah,
you.
you're probably using a mic across the room.
No, I'm using a mic right in front of me, but
That's a bit better. Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't pick up that well. But what I'm saying is like the process of UEN offering ad lumen to the districts is kind of like a value add, like a city putting chlorination in the water to ensure that it's safe. There's lots of things that we do that way with UEN that is very value added for the school districts and charters.
Well, there's more to come on this for sure.
For sure.
Yeah. Having a common policy and understanding who's responsible for what is probably some of the first things we'll have to work out. But there are tools and things that can be purchased. How it is buying, CrowdStrike for most institutions. And when the legislature sees us cooperating, we're much more likely to fund those things than if we're all out doing our own thing. So coming together and working in a more shared environment where we're all working together is going to make us a lot more secure. And I think that's something with policy and funding and things that Troy and his group can really help us with.
Yeah, for sure. Any other questions on cybersecurity for now? All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, well, thanks, Troy. And hopefully we'll try to pick up the pace a little bit. Our apologies, but our next one is around professional development with Justin Brooksby. So, Justin, if you can just take a minute or two, and then if there are questions or discussion on this, that'd be great.
Yeah, I have a lot of information here, but mostly it's for your reading pleasure after the meeting if you want. So you can click next slide, Kelly. So a quick overview of our focus in professional development. These four areas. One of them is creating online learning content and adding stuff to our e-media. This is educational content for our educators across the state. Our second is to design and facilitate online courses on effective technology integration in our classrooms. And third is we provide on-site professional developments at schools. We'll usually get principals or school districts or even higher ed institutions that email us and ask us to come present to their educators. And we also attend various conferences across the state to present on. And then fourth, our focus is on a USBE educational technology endorsement and getting educators through that program. So the next couple slides, I just want to kind of give you an example of what the impact is on these areas. So next slide. So this is one example of content that we create. AI is a huge thing in education right now. So some of the content that we created around AI recently is content that we've gathered and put into the eMedia Hub that can include lesson plans on how educators can use AI with their students. We developed an AI toolkit that gives guidance on using AI. And we've also started to create some courses based around AI. One of our most popular courses is that AI and Student Learning, which is an introductory course. And now we're starting to get into areas of using AI in the writing process with students. We do have a lot of statewide software contracts that we are involved with. So typically, anytime there's a statewide contract, we try to integrate those tools into our training. And some of those on the right are recent AI tools that our students are starting to use. Next slide. So I just wanted to quickly show you the impact of our courses that we provide. Our courses provide college credit to all of our teachers who are taking these courses. Um, right now, we have over 2,000 participants taking courses from us, and that's divided amongst, well, now we only have 5 instructors. So they keep pretty busy at this, and we have 25 different courses. We're constantly reevaluating the courses that we provide to find areas that those are needed. So it's definitely not a stagnant process. But these courses are all self-paced online, and it's very convenient for teachers to take them. But you can see our most popular course right now is the AI and Student Learning course with 442 students enrolled in that course. Next slide. So our other area is traveling throughout the state, visiting our schools. I have on this slide this year and then a few years back just tracking our attendance. These would be individuals that received on-site professional development. So this is separate from the course enrollment that I showed you. So this year we're already at 270 unique events across the state, reaching over 5,000 attendees. Last year you can see we're 11,000, over 11,000 participants who heard from us last year. So we are reaching a lot of individuals across the state. Next slide.
Are those specific people, or is that just attendees total?
So those would be like if we go to a school and we have, 30 teachers in a 1 hour presentation at school, those would count as 30. Or if we go to a
Okay.
conference and we have, 15 people in our session, that's another 15 people added to that. So
Okay.
it could be
So not,
people that have attended different.
got it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, next slide. So this is our ed tech endorsement that we're tracking. We really started to get into this in 2016. You can see we only had 8 people complete the ed tech endorsement in that year, and we've been steadily increasing the completion of it. The ed tech endorsement is for 3 credit hour courses. So it's a good amount of work, and it's all has to be applied into the classroom. So the teachers will learn something, go use it in their classroom, then come back and report and share with other educators on what they learned. So we do have a big front load entry into the endorsement. You can see our bulk of educators in the endorsement are just in our foundation class, 402. So we're working to try to push teachers all the way through the full endorsement process. This year I think we'll probably beat our high of 68 completions by the end of this year, just based on some of the stats that I'm seeing. Next slide. We're also very involved in going throughout the state and hearing and listening to see what our stakeholders are needing and wanting. One of the ways we do that is through our C-Forum meetings, and those happen in the school year. Those are the last year's meetings that we had. You can see that we make sure that we are attending throughout the entire state. We have 25 to 30 unique LEAs represented in each one of these meetings, and then you can see our attendance. And typically, those are representatives from each of our LEAs who take information back to their schools. Next slide. Another one of the big areas, and I think Spencer talked about this in the last board meeting, is our Leading School Summit. This is really to help principals align with what we're teaching educators as far as technology integration goes. So these are kind of leadership technology summit that we have once a year. And you can see there a few years ago, we went to Adobe and kind of showed them how they do things at Adobe and how that could be applied to their schools. And then the last slide, if you want to click over to that, I won't play this, but if you want to hear from a teacher that has gone through our courses and gone through our EdTech endorsement, this is Sarah Posey. She's the 2025 Utah Teacher of the Year, and she talks about her experience in our classes and in our endorsement and how that has helped her as an educator and how it has helped her students. So that's all that I have. If you have any questions, happy to answer them.
I don't, any comments or questions that you might have? That's excellent presentation. That's interesting. So professional development is alive and well, and it's a focus in the areas that you've outlined.
It's alive and well. We're trying to stay alive with the CPB fundings. It had an impact on us, but I think everyone on the board, I think Spencer has recognized the importance of what we do across the state. So we're moving forward and doing well. Our services are still wanted and needed, I believe. If that's not correct, Rick and Jason will let me know.
No, I think that's fine for now. More to talk about this. I guess the colleges still teach courses in this area as well, right?
Excuse me?
The colleges and universities teach courses and certifications in these areas as well.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Justin, for sharing that. We'll turn a minute over to Lisa. She's going to talk about software. I think this is something a lot of you are familiar with, but we did want to cover it.
Yeah, okay. I'll just quickly just mention, currently UETN plays a strategic role in managing the enterprise software agreements. We support public ed, higher ed, and the libraries. And the key is behind the larger licenses, which what we are trying to achieve would be the cost savings of the licenses, equitable pricing across the state. And also our goal is to make data-informed decisions. Some of the examples quickly that we're doing would be the Zoom license, and we've achieved by pulling in public ed and higher ed, our cost savings, the savings were very, very incredible that way. Canvas, internet content filtering for public ed. We've done for the online library software for the libraries, higher ed, public ed. Regarding strategic initiatives, and it's been mentioned throughout this whole area. I think we've looked at the CrowdStrike that the university and UVU is currently negotiating. And that says, should UETN be paralleling the same thing for public ed? Troy mentioned it, everyone has mentioned it, but I think looking at what everyone's using moving forward and pulling in that information. Open AI contracts. The University of Utah has entered into a university-wide open AI contract. Well, pulling in USHE, this has been happening at a faster pace. But what we have done is we've made it short term. So I feel like we need to take a look at public ed too. And we've had some emails regarding public ed, but making, trying to obtain the same concept of pulling in information, what I would say, gather information from all the sectors, gather the data. What are we looking for? And I feel like going forward, the UETN is really in a place to go ahead and to enter into enterprise agreements. And I think regarding cost efficiencies and equity will be achieved throughout the state.
Just a quick note on this. as Justin noted, he mentioned this AI software as just as an example. That's something we've licensed to the schools. One of the things we feel like is an area maybe you could call a weakness or an opportunity is, or both of them, is to get a little bit more depth from our stakeholders, especially in K-12, in their utilization of certain software. While we tend to license quite a bit, we don't do as good a job probably in monitoring how well utilized they are, except for these really big ones, these big ones like Zoom or Canvas. And so I think going forward, that's something we hope to do a little bit better tie between what we license and monitoring its utilization and making decisions based on some of that data and feedback from our districts that we haven't captured as well, maybe. So just a thought there.
I know on the university campus, and I think this is in a number of places, there's an effort to try to work together to get a list of preferred vendors and which are cybersecure, and going forward to work together so that we can get a good pricing. And we have a number of contracts that UETN has put together. And we also have a number of contracts that the USU schools have put together. But the more we work together, the more that we have in our ability to work with vendors and get better pricing and get to better conditions than we have had in the past. So I think there's a lot of work we can do in this area that'll be very helpful. And I think the legislature, at least from my understanding of leadership, Spencer, you found this out as well, are excited that we're doing this and would be willing to fund when we come together on contracts, these contracts in the future.
Yeah, although, go ahead, Lisa.
What I was going to say is when you mentioned Zoom was a prime example, and it was with the state licenses, for 15,000 students for public ed, it was costing, our final quote was $1 million approximately. When we added higher ed, which was 50,000 licenses, was an additional 1.2 million. So the cost per license went down. The savings was incredible. And that's what they realized, was pulling the two together is where we really achieved the savings. And I think we've got to look at those licenses and really tighten them up and pull them together. The legislature, they do notice that.
Yeah. So the question for us strategically, should we be doing more there, and what's a good process to ensure we do that? When, for example, you talked about CrowdStrike for higher ed, how can we quickly be a part of that in a meaningful way to help involve K-12 if it makes sense?
And we're happy to do that anytime there's that interest, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we're getting close here. Thanks, everybody. If you need to drop off, of course, it's understandable. We scheduled this for an hour, but we'll try and hit these last two quickly with, we have Katie Garrett, who's going to talk about instructional content.
Thanks, Spencer. And I am, in the interest of time, I will do this very quickly. So this instructional content area really encompasses our curated resources and programs that support education, healthcare, and how we engage with our stakeholders from a content perspective. So what we always like to say is we have this great, strong network, and these are the resources delivered over that network. So you can go to the next slide. So really high level, this is focusing on kind of three main areas: our instructional resources and content, media production, and Utah's online school library. And as I talk through some of this, you'll see some overlap with the professional development, and that's where Justin and I's teams work really well together to help bring these instructional resources and educational content to our educators. So the next slide. So this is kind of a more detailed look at what that is. So eMedia, the lesson plans that are created within that platform and delivered there, the content that's on UEN.org, the core curriculum database also on UEN.org. This is the K-12 standards that educators are required to teach. This is also bringing together open education resources and curating those and delivering those through eMedia, as well as helping with delivering those those different resources. Going into media production, this is where we develop what I like to call purpose-built instructional media for those professional development courses that Justin's talking about. So instead of having generic, maybe national providers on teaching a certain subject or AI, we are able to offer personalized and customized media within those courses. Alongside that, we have on-demand instructional media. So these are our things that we deliver in our YouTube, and they're kind of our just-in-time instructional strategies. And then also supporting with media that communicates the value of our UETN services and best practices. And then moving along into Utah's online school library. So this includes, if you can go back one more and then I will wrap it up. That's Kelly's version of the wrap it up music.
I just heard one more and then I just automatically went.
Oh, I went, but yeah, anyway. So these are the current databases that we have licensed as a part of the Utah's online school library. These are all on contract for the next 5 years. I think we're in year 2 right now, with the option to go to 10. So there's a community and committee of librarians that help bring together and do the procurement for these different resources. But I told you I'd go quick and I did. So any questions there?
Well, this is a good summary, and again, a SWOT analysis is applied to this. It'd be helpful in helping to set the direction that we'll take from here on. The internet has a lot of things on it, so making sure trustworthy kinds of things that people could use is a very important thing.
Yeah, and how AI affects how we curate content and the delivery strategy of that will change as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Katie. And I apologize again, we're a little over time. A quick note on the telehealth side of this from the last 2 presentations of Justin and Katie, we have the National National Regional Telehealth Resource Center grant that Nikki Perishow maintains with Sarah. It's maybe not quite as visible across our healthcare community here in Utah, but from a regional standpoint, it's very similar in the sense that they're a technical resource for telehealth services, and they coordinate with the national groups, the national TRC on telehealth implementation and healthcare. I just wanted to note that quickly because that's also in the vein of professional development and educational content resources in the telehealth arena. Final one is research support. This may be one of the lesser known areas for UETN, but it's also at our roots. This is probably one of the main reasons we are part of the University of Utah and why we interact with fellow, what we call research and education networks across the country. And I've asked Jeff Egley just to take a minute or two on what that means for us and how it might pertain to some of our strategic planning thinking here going forward. So Jeff.
All right, thanks, Spencer. I'm going to drill down real quickly. I just have a couple of slides. I'll try to be sensitive to everybody's time as well. And you can go to the next slide, Kelly. So a couple of areas I'm going to focus on. The first one is, you may not be aware, but UEN is directly involved in some research grants. The first one is SHICATE, which is Southwest Higher Education Knowledge and Technology Transfer. We're a co-PI. Lev Gosnick, the CIO for Arizona State University, is the lead on this. And what this has done, we're actually on the second round of this, second grant that has been funded. And this has funded a conference both in Arizona and one in Utah. Now we're gearing up for the second round. And this actually brings research from the Southwest region, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, obviously Nevada, and others, where you're bringing researchers from university and federal national laboratories together with the regional networks to discuss what it is they're trying to do, where they're going with their research, some of this research, in fact, a lot of it is out in the wilds, very low bandwidth requirements, but challenges in how to connect them. Some, such as the Very Large Array in New Mexico, working on their next generation, very bandwidth intensive. And so as they share and download what they're trying to do, it's getting everybody in the room. And it's not just the UENs and the Sun Corridors, which is Arizona's version of UEN. It's also getting the departments of transportations from states in to discuss how can they support this infrastructure build out, understanding and anticipating where this research is happening. And so the next one is the Wild West. And this is a $5 million grant for 5 years shared between Arizona, Nevada, and Utah. It also funds a staff member in each state and a vehicle to really focus on those types of research that I kind of mentioned earlier that is really out there in the wilds. We're going to see things such as Great Basin research that's environmental, aerification, bristlecone pine, seismic. If we look at Utah, because seismic's an area we've been supporting in these areas. And so we're going to be collaborating. These three staff members are actually going to be working together to learn and understand how to support research. And the real focus was to get these regional networks better understand the needs of research and how to develop. Actually, this is workforce development. So it doesn't fund the actual research, it funds the staff development to get people that can understand this and help innovate and figure out how to connect this research and tie it back to universities. And then we have this last one, which was just announced last week. And so in discussions with University of Nevada, Reno, with the University of Utah, and with the Utah office of the BLM, if you look at a national map, everybody's familiar with the old classic fire towers. Well, now this has really moved into where they're leveraging cameras in rural parts of the West and using an AI engine to monitor all these cameras and help support and monitor and catch fires early, detect them early. They want these cameras out where people aren't. They're not worried about on Lake Mountain on the west side of Utah Lake. They get 20,000 calls. What they're worried about is in places like Grouse Creek, Park Valley, places in the outer reaches where they can get visibility and be able to respond much quicker. So if you look at a Western map, Utah's a donut hole. We have not been doing this, but Nevada, Idaho, California, Oregon, University of Oregon's a fairly new one. They're doing this. They're all standardizing, and we'll be doing the same. And then this works with an outfit by the name of Alert West that provides this single pane of glass that first responders and others can monitor and use. An example was given coming to the fire, Monroe Fire this year, where a lot of firefighters were coming from Nevada and noticed that they didn't have any kind of visibility as what's going on compared into some of our neighboring states. So we're just kicked off this internally yesterday. We'll be working with the Utah Communication Authority. UDOT is also going to be providing cameras into this to contribute. So these are three areas right now where we're actively involved and there's funding and we have a role to play. If you go to the next slide, Kelly, that'd be great. So we also support other types of research to help them do what they're trying to do. And so one is Powder. If you've heard of the university's platform for open wireless data-driven experimental research, we come to the table with them as they have needs and trying to understand ways to connect placement, antennas. We worked with them on trying to identify spectrum. And so we come to the table with Cobus Vandermeer. He's working on a new grant right now. We help pull together. They were trying to expand a research effort, and we helped pull in the Navajo Technical University into a conversation with them so they could look at some other players that they can participate. We actively work with the University of Utah Seismology on sensors. We connect, if you don't know, the Department of Physics at the University of Utah's telescope on Fiscal Peak. And then we have Utah Forge, the Frontier Observatory for Research in Geothermal. We just turned up a new licensed league for them. We've had it about for 8 years, about an unlicensed league supporting that area down in the Milford Valley. This is a very active area right now with a lot of attention on it. You'll see a lot of articles talking about geothermal research and what they're doing down there right now. We needed to get them some protected spectrum, so we have a license now path in because there's a lot of different activity down there, high noise floor. It's hard to support unlicensed down there now, and so now recently we've turned up a license link for them. And then stuff that you don't see that goes on day in, day out that Kevin Quire and his team are doing. And that is providing the bandwidth and broadband that's necessary for research. What has happening at the University of Utah, working with the Space Dynamics Lab and our peers at Utah State University. There's a lot of different activities that come about. People bring forward their needs for the research that's going on the network day in and day out that we're helping support on a university basis with the existing network, and then planning ahead to make sure that we can provide the capacity needed for some of the things that are going on, for example, with AI. So kind of a quick run through, but gives you an idea of some of those things, but there's always some type of activity that we're involved in. And I think one thing we do well is we help facilitate and collaborate in these efforts to help kind of help bring folks together and help provide a solution. So that was fast, but any questions, anything I can answer for you?
Jeff, are you familiar with the HPE Green Lake data center that's going to be?
This is the one out at the point of the mountain.
Yes.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, and then the expansion also of the data center at the University of Utah, by which other institutions of higher education have been invited to be involved if they'd like. So those are things, again, that you'll be connecting and providing as a service and research. So.
And one of those I did call out, Steve, is Joe Breen. And so Joe's been active on the fire camera. And then Joe and I meet every Friday morning. So just to kind of make sure we're up to date on things.
And those two you mentioned, Steve, are AI related research initiatives, right?
Yeah. But again, they really want to make it a statewide thing. And so through UETN and getting connectivity, then other institutions can take advantage of those facilities just beyond the University of Utah. So,
yeah, and that's I think that's a great example of UETN's role there, right? Is that we're providing that infrastructural ability for research.
Activity, yeah.
Well, thank you for all listening. That was a pretty quick run at things, but we thought it might be a good overview. Apologize, it probably wasn't as interactive as maybe it could be. Maybe that's the Zoom effect, but hopefully as we get together in November, we can get a little more flavor of that. But with that, Christina.
Wonderful. That was fantastic. I really appreciate that. Thank you, everyone. I'm seeing on the agenda a closed session. Is that still the plan?
It's only there if you want to. I can give you a brief update on from what we talked about last time in terms of our restructuring and things. I can just do that for a couple minutes, or if we want to wait to do that in November, we can certainly do that as well.
I have to be sensitive to folks' time. I guess let me just kind of ask, would folks like to stay on for a few minutes and listen in a closed session to an update? Perhaps we'll wrap up, just give a couple announcements at the end. If folks need to drop off, they can. Those who want to stay, we can go into a quick closed session for an update. So just end of the meeting updates. Our next board meeting has been mentioned, November 5th from 9 to 3, and that's going to be at Utah Valley University. And then our next board meeting will be December 12th from 9 to 11. So we'll go ahead. Those that would like to stay, we'd love that. Those that need to drop off, we want to respect your time. So we'll move to a closed session now. So I'd like to invite everyone to drop off who's not a member of the board, except for Spencer, Denise, Lisa, and Andrew. Good, we've stopped our recording and we're pausing our live stream. Let me know when those are done.